I just want to start with a disclaimer here today. I think it's really important when we're talking about the subject that we are talking about today. Subjects that have to do with child abuse, child neglect, issues of a sexual nature, and things along those lines. I also am going to be talking a bit about spiritual abuse and purity culture. So if any of these topics are things that make you feel uncomfortable, make you upset, bring back bad memories, then I highly, highly, highly suggest that you just go ahead, sit this one out. It's not for you, and that's completely fine. Just want to let you know that ahead of time. This is going to delve into some really, and I cannot stress this enough, really heavy stuff. If you live in the United States or a country that broadcasts shows from the American television network TLC, then you probably already know of the Duggars. Self-proclaimed independent Baptists, the family is headed by the eternally smirking Jim Bob, a lifelong believer of Christianity. His wife Michelle had enjoyed a more conventional American upbringing that included public school, short shorts, and cheerleading. In the 1980s, a friend invited Michelle to join the church that Jim Bob attended. Michelle spent time working at a yogurt shop that was owned by Jim Bob's mother, and the pair claimed they bonded over their mutual love of the Bible. Jim and Michelle were wed in 1984, and they famously went on to have an enormous brood, although this probably was not their original plan. Michelle famously used birth control after the birth of her first son, Josh. And during that time, she would also suffer from a miscarriage that she blamed on birth control, and we will get into that a little bit further on. Although she has never offered any medical proof to back this claim up. Perhaps things would have turned out differently for the family if Michelle had sought therapy after her loss, but instead she sought out the church. The Duggars decided that the miscarriage had been a punishment for not allowing God to decide how many children they were to have. So they let God take over and went on to have 19 children in total. And if that wasn't unusual enough, they decided to give each one of those children a name that started with the letter J, just like their maybe narcissist father. Michelle's poor, battered body produced Josh, Jana, John David, Jill, Jessa, Ginger, Joseph, Josiah, Joanna, Jedediah, Jeremiah, Jason, James, Justin, Jackson, Joanna, Jennifer, Jordan Grace, and Josie.
Oh my God!
They would later also take in Michelle's great nephew, Tyler, and have full custody of that child as well. So if you are counting at home, that is actually 20 children that they have raised. While the young family was rapidly expanding, they were actually chronically short on funds. Michelle cut coupons to feed them, as you can read on their old blog that she used to run before they became famous. And she also heavily relied on her older daughters for free childcare, in a practice that she would later become famous for calling the buddy system. The Duggars now boast that they never had to go into debt to keep the family going, but if you talk to people who were around them in the early days, they actually say they relied pretty heavily on donations and charity from their church. They did believe that God would never give them more children than they could provide for, but I think in the end it was TLC who would be coming to their financial rescue.
I don't see a path for this family to come back from this.
The girls have totally forgiven Josh.
I would have told them immediately. You get him psychological help. You take this to the authorities. He should have been removed from the home immediately.
You know, I'm not denying guilt.
It is amazing to me what the media is putting you through.
I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Portrayed as the picture of wholesome perfection. No TV, modest dress, and above all, no premarital sex.
Don't deal with it at all, which is the worst case scenario.
Joshua, take thee Anna to be my wedded wife.
She needs to leave him.
Duggar children have become celebrities in their own right.
I have millions of people watching us.
We should never place the preference of an adult over the safety and innocence of a child.
So the very first thing we're going to be starting with today is the infamous golf date hump. I think why this is considered so funny is because of how famous the Duggars are for their belief in purity culture, for their belief in abstaining from any kind of physical affection with someone until you are married to them. I think hand holding might be okay, but that's the extent of it. There's no kissing before marriage. There's certainly nothing more than that before marriage. So when we talk about dating in the fundy community, we're not talking about people who are together for a couple years, maybe they move in together, then they get engaged. This is not how independent Baptist community, this is not how they see dating and courtship. To them, if you're going to call someone your boyfriend, you pretty much have to be on the track to get married to that person at some point. When Jessa was dating her future husband, Ben Seawald, she's really in a courtship at this point, and so she goes on a double date with her parents. And during the double date, Jim Bob talks about how it is important to him that his children see him and Michelle having a normal love relationship. And I guess his way of doing that is to dry hump his wife in front of his children. So anyway, that happens during the date. And if you just keep an eye on that clip and look at Jessa's face as her father is dry humping her mother, that is really, really, really awful for her. And I cringe so, so hard. But it's also really, really funny. And in the grand scheme of things that have to do with the Duggars and scandal, this one is really at the very, very, very bottom of the list. So this was one that I had actually never heard. I'm not someone who actually spends a lot of time on Duggar snark communities. It's just not one of my particular interests. I'm a little more interested in sister wives because of the Josh Duggar infamy. I've gotten a little bit more interested in looking into the Duggars, especially from the perspective of being in a cult. So supposedly when Jessa and her husband Ben, so that is Ben Seawald, so she's now Jessa Duggar Seawald, the day they were married, supposedly according to a source that was later removed from the internet, someone who claims that they were at the wedding. There's no way to confirm or deny any of this, by the way, so this is all allegedly. The source claimed that Anna and Josh Duggar, so Josh is Jessa's older brother, he and his wife walked into the coat closet right after the ceremony had taken place and caught Jessa and Ben in a compromising position. Why is this scandalous? Well, according to the person who was claiming that this happened, this would be considered scandalous in their circles because in this culture, before you have your first consummation of the marriage, you are supposed to have some prayer time together, I guess, to bless whatever future children you're going to have. Invite Jesus into the bed with you, which is terrible and creepy, but that's kind of what you're supposed to do. And obviously, if they were getting it on in the coat closet, I don't think Jesus wants to come into the coat closet, you know? I have two reasons I don't really care about this one. One, if a married couple was having sex, I don't really care. And two, it's probably not true. There was literally over 1,000 people at that wedding. It was being televised. People magazine was there taking pictures. So I would personally say that there is almost a 0% chance that these two snuck away and had some hanky-panky in the closet. And honestly, if they did, I'm not mad. I'm impressed, and that's amazing. Next up, we're going to be talking about something that's fairly infamous again in the Duggar snark community. This was before they had all the financial comfort that they have right now, and this was something that Michelle posted on her blog. Before TLC reached out to Jim Bob and Michelle with interest in doing a show about them, Michelle wrote a blog called The Duggar Family, Children Are a Heritage of the Lord. And you can still find that in Web Archive. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this post and then we'll talk about it. She says, and this was in 2005.
Dear friend, it was 1 a.m. in the morning as I stood folding laundry with tears streaming down my cheeks. Feelings of being overwhelmed flooded my mind. I cried aloud, Lord, I need your help. I can't do it all. I feel so inadequate. Diapers, dishes, laundry, meals, cleanup, school lessons, baths, hugs, kisses, corrections. My list seemed to go on and on. Then it was as if a small, still voice said,
Michelle, it's easy to praise me when things are going good, but are you willing to praise me now?
Immediately the scripture that says,
Offer up a sacrifice of praise.
came to mind. I said, okay, Lord, I will praise you even now. It really is a sacrifice. So through the tears I began to sing. The joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord is my strength. In my heart there was a release as if a burden had been lifted. I finished the laundry at 2 a.m. and I went to bed. Days later I was at our piano teacher's home, trying to catch up on paperwork while the children were taking their lessons. Instead, I kept drifting off to sleep. The teacher noticed and said,
Are you okay?
I replied, I'm fine, I'm just tired. I was up late finishing laundry. As we talked more, she said she actually enjoyed doing laundry and that she would be glad to come over and help me. That weekend when she arrived, we had mountains of dirty laundry, and when she left, we had a neat, orderly stack of clean laundry. For 10 years now, our piano teacher, whom we consider a part of the family and lovingly call Nana, has faithfully come, now twice a week, to help us with laundry. God sent an angel in answer of my cry for help. He is faithful to hear the humble cries of his children.
Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up.
God lifted my burden, literally mountains of laundry, and freed me to meet the more urgent needs of my family.
Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us, unto him be glory.
Remember, mothers, where God guides, he provides. With love, Michelle.
So yeah, I found that kind of disturbing. This is why I find this kind of stuff disturbing. We're going to see a bit of a pattern here, but Michelle, it seems from just my observations, is that Michelle does seem to go through some postpartum depression after at least a few of the births, and I think this might be an example of that. She's having mental health difficulties, which I can only imagine you would with that many children. But rather than go to a reputable science-based therapist or psychologist or even her family doctor to discuss these feelings of feeling overwhelmed, needing help, which I'm sure you actually do when you have that many children, she has been taught to pray on it and then to accept whatever comes after that as some sort of intervention from God. Now, my personal opinion is that God didn't intervene here. I think she had a friend who saw that she was very overwhelmed, wanted to help her out, but I think this is a really dangerous rhetoric for evangelical Christians and fundamentalist Christians to be pushing this idea that no matter what is going on, no matter how severe your depression, feelings of overwhelming burden, you turn inward, you turn to God, you pray, right? You don't go to a doctor, you don't seek outside help. So these people end up having to try to fix these problems on their own, and I don't think it goes very well. I honestly feel very badly for Michelle here. Obviously, the Lord isn't going to come and help you fold laundry, right? So she would have been much better off asking someone, which she does eventually, right? She finally does go to this piano teacher and asks her for help. God didn't answer your prayers. You did, Michelle. You did. Next on on the iceberg journey to the bottom of hell, we're going to be talking a little bit about a woman named Evelyn Ruark. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, and that is Michelle Duggar's sister. So Ruark would be her maiden name, and her sister Evelyn is in a civil partnership with a woman, and obviously with Michelle Duggar and the whole Duggar conservative IBLP kind of viewpoint, they are not very supportive of Evelyn and her lifestyle, as you can imagine. I don't think that's very godly or Christian of you, Michelle. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to dox this poor woman. I don't know if this one is actually true or untrue. I wouldn't go that far, but it is definitely something that is well known in the Duggar Snark and Duggar fan community. That is the rumor that Jill Duggar, who is a licensed midwife, was prepared to be a midwife to a woman named Susanna. I'm not even going to describe it to you. Go ahead, listen to this quote, and we're going to talk about it when we come back.
The Duggars claim to practice Christian love in their everyday life, but that kindness apparently doesn't extend to unwed mothers even if the woman is a family member. Insiders exclusively tell RadarOnline.com that daughter Jill Duggar, a practicing midwife, wanted to help sister-in-law Anna Duggar's younger sister Susanna Keller give birth to her first child 2 years ago, but Jim Bob and Michelle wouldn't allow it. Jill was very excited to assist Susanna through the birth, a source reveals to Radar of the newly married 23-year-old, now pregnant with her first child. Michelle and Jim Bob, however, wouldn't let her participate. They thought Jill shouldn't be exposed to an unmarried mother in that condition. As Radar previously reported, the conservative Christian family iced previously close friend Susanna out of the family when she decided to ditch tradition and live like a normal teenager. When she became pregnant with daughter Noelle out of wedlock in 2012, sources say the family banned the 22-year-old from their TLC reality show, 19 Kids and Counting, and refused to say her name on air. When Susanna ran into the family at an event in Texas last year, they were cordial, but became appalled when the young mom allowed her daughter, now nearly 2, to dance. The family considers dancing to be too sensual.
I'm not going to say that this is definitely true. This definitely sounds like it could just be a rumor, but why I did include it in the iceberg is I think it gives you another indication of how restrictive and controlling, especially for young unmarried women, the Duggar family and their belief systems are. They have this, what they call the umbrella of authority, and this is something that they teach to their children through their homeschooling programs. This is one of the things you learn as a child growing up. Obviously, the ultimate authority in the world is God or the church, right? The church that you go to counts as the God. Then you have the husband and dad, who's the umbrella under the church. Then you have mom, who is under dad's authority, and you have the children at the very bottom. The idea and what they teach you through this, and we're going to get into this a little bit later when we talk about Bill Gothard and the ATI and the IBLP, and we're going to go through all that alphabet stuff. But the key takeaway here is that they essentially teach children that when you obey your authority figure, as the Bible tells you to do, supposedly, allegedly, then you will have the full protection of God. So nothing bad can happen to you when you are obeying your authority. This extends to women as well. Women and wives are expected to obey their husbands as well as obeying the church and God. And if they do that, they are again told nothing bad can happen to you. And you will hear stories from people who have left these very restrictive communities, and they talk about how when they were growing up, they truly did believe that if they didn't obey their parents, the next time they stepped out the door, they might get hit by a car or something terrible could happen to them because they would no longer have the protection of God. I think this is, again, a very dangerous thing to be teaching children. I think it's dangerous to teach children the idea that nothing bad can happen to you if you are obeying God, because obviously accidents can happen to anyone in this world. So it's very dangerous to tell, especially a young child, that as long as you're doing what mommy and daddy tell you to do, you don't have to worry. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, wait, isn't Jill Duggar an adult? And yes, she is. But as an unmarried woman, she still is considered under the authority of her mother and father. So as long as she's living under their roof, which of course in those evangelical and fundamentalist circles, you live under your father's roof until you are married. There's no women moving outside the home, being completely independent. Generally speaking, you don't see that as much in the evangelical community. So you are either under your father's authority or under your husband's authority, unless you are widowed later in your life. And even then, you're still under the church's authority. And as your children get older, your sons will eventually have authority over you as well. Of course, they're men, so they must, according to their belief system, a woman is always under someone's authority. Next up on our journey from the top of the iceberg down to the hottest pits of hell. Just mere days after Michelle Duggar had a difficult C-section during the birth of her daughter Josie, she showed up protesting. She actually bullied a store owner out of the town. Go ahead and listen to this clip. The Brobot is going to go ahead and read a quote that was on Celebrity's website, but they took this actually from a local newspaper in the area. So go ahead and listen to this.
Controversy looms over the State Alcoholic Beverage Control Board's decision to deny a beer permit for a local gas station. The board denied the request Wednesday for the EZ Mart on Sunset Avenue in Springdale. And for some in the area, it comes as a shock. EZ Mart thought it would get the go-ahead. Employees at the store said initially, no public officials had objected to their request, until yesterday, when a surprise guest came into the ABC board's meeting to testify. I was told the Duggars were there protesting it, and that Mrs. Duggar was up there crying. And she said that she didn't want alcohol in her neighborhood or her town, so we got turned down for it, said assistant manager Tommy Labiff. Labiff said she and others were more than certain that EZ Mart would be selling beer. I was told the mayor wasn't contesting it, so we were told by our general manager that we were going to get it for sure, but we were told no, said Labiff. 4029 News spoke to Michelle Duggar on the phone, and she said alcohol in convenience stores would bring children closer to it.
Personally, I don't think alcohol needs to be convenient. I think it needs to be placed in a place where adults can get to it, and they will have a choice to get to it. But our children should not be bombarded with that. It's so close to home,
said Duggar. For some, it's a letdown. I'm kind of upset about the situation because I feel that it would be convenient to my house. I could just walk down the street instead of having to drive my car, said Jeremy Barra. Although that convenience store was turned down, several others in the area got the green light, including the Murphy Express on Weddington Drive in Fayetteville, where construction at the site isn't even fully completed.
She's basically threatening the livelihood of a small business owner because she's a little bit sad that alcohol is going to be in her town. I understand that you don't really like alcohol. You don't want it in your home. I respect that. But here's the thing, Michelle. Nobody else cares. I'm not going to tell you not to have 19 children. I don't think that's a good idea, but I'm not going to tell you not to do it. You don't get to tell other people whether they can buy alcohol or not, although apparently, yes, you do, because it sounds like this store ended up unable to get their license. I think it's incredibly uncool to do something like that to a small business owner, regardless of your personal beliefs.